Call the regular council meeting of April the 11th to order and first of all, introduce one late item. That is a report from the Director of Operations Intergovernment Relations with regards to Operations Department Capital Program. And that will go on the agenda as a report under 7C. And with that, I'd entertain a motion to approve the agenda. Councillors Niche, Councillors Skelton Morvan, any further additions? All in favor? Any opposed? Carried. We have a presentation from the Chief Financial Officer with regards to the 2023 draft budget. Good to have you in the room, Director Bauman.
Thank you. Okay, so good evening. This is the first of two in-person public consultations on the 2023 budget. Staff presented the 2023 draft municipal budget on March 22nd at the Special Committee of the Whole. Today we will be showing a snapshot of that presentation along with effects of some changes since that time. The city has been working hard to advance the understanding of higher levels of government of our failing infrastructure. This work was underscored by Mother Nature herself during the beginning of December when a number of water mains broke during the cold that broke the camel's back. Before the draft budget on March 22nd, the Premier announced $65 million in funding to help the city pursue the replacement of water lines identified through an infrastructure replacement strategy that is being developed to identify priority replacement areas. This funding is included in the planned replacement for 2023 that was presented to Council. Also included is an allocation of funding from the province under the Growing Communities Fund that was announced on February 10th. The funding is required to be placed in a separate reserve prior to being spent. The budget is being updated to include this reserve requirement now that we know the amount allocated to Prince Rupert. As a reminder, reserves are savings set up by statute or by council and can only be used for a prescribed purpose. Like a separate savings account for your household, reserves are important for municipalities to have to help cover unexpected capital costs as they come up. They can be used to leverage grants for replacement of infrastructure or new capital assets. For instance, if the city is required to fund 30% of the cost of a grant-funded project, we would utilize reserves sometimes for the 30%. They have no ability to offset operating tax increases not attributable to their specified purpose. For example, a reserve that's specified for capital replacement can't offset operational costs, which are the day-to-day expenses of labor, insurance, etc. Reserves are making up one of the funding sources in 2023 to pay for capital items. The city received a couple of grants in prior years that either had flexibility for capital items or a specific reason. For example, the water treatment grant. These were transferred to separate reserves. These, combined with general capital and equipment reserves, are proposed to be utilized in 2023 under the conditions set when the reserves were established. At the presentation on March 22nd, we proposed an increase of 15.7% to the property tax rate to fund the services at existing levels. The following week, City West, a municipally controlled corporation, announced they would be providing a payment to the city in the amount of $500,000. Additionally, since the presentation, staff have been able to refine the budget deficit downwards by nearly $300,000 through identifying reduced hours during low-use time periods and an adjustment downwards in the tax-funded capital repairs, which can be postponed to 2024. This has enabled staff to recalculate the rate that is now proposed at 12.5%. Under the recalculated rate, the increase to the average assessed valued homeowner would be $217 as opposed to $282 under the previous draft. The bulk of the increase is proposed to fund inflation and a reduced payment in lieu of taxes from the Prince Rupert Port Authority. Smaller items impacting the increase are staff additions, increases to grants, the policing contract, and legal services to address Council's strategic priorities, in particular housing development initiatives. On the City's webpage, under Quick Links, property owners can view our 2023 draft budget informational documents, including our proposed 5-year financial plan and the 2023 budget presentation from March 22nd. Also available is our budget simulation, which is another way to provide feedback on the budget. The budget simulation is also presented on the landing page as shown here. Submissions from the simulation will be shared with Council after the simulation closes on April 19th. Oh, and this did not come through very well. I'm sorry. This will be placed on the city's website, so if anybody wants to go ahead and have a look at it, you can see it in up close and personal, I guess. So this actually is an example of taxpayer receipt, which can be accessed through the budget simulation. And it identifies the allocation of tax-funded costs for the year by department. The reason I put this in the presentation is it actually identifies, and this is based on an average assessed valued home, what the actual tax is going to the municipality only, and how they would be broken up according to how much you're paying per year for public safety, how much is being allocated to transportation, recreation services, etc. So we encourage people to go ahead and have a look just to see. And this was basically an addition in response to Councillor Nisha's commentary from the last council meeting. And a reminder that the provincial government offers residents the homeowner grant and the tax deferral program. These programs are available to reduce property taxes paid and defer the tax payments through a loan that is recovered at the time of sale. Details of these programs can be found on the provincial government website, the city's website, or on your property tax notice. Homeowners must make application to the province for the homeowner grant before the tax payment deadline on July 4th, or a provincial penalty will be applied. The homeowner grant can be applied for now by going to gov.bc.ca/homeowner grant or by calling toll-free 1-888-355-2700 for more information and to make that application. We will have another public consultation opportunity on Monday, April 24th. Questions, comments can be emailed to finance@princerupert.ca or taken by phone at 250-627-0914. And of course, we can receive them by mail. And that concludes my short presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any quick questions for council? I mean, this is just meant to be a recap. All right. Thank you very much, Director Bauman. We now hit the point of the agenda where we are open to public comments regarding any agenda item that is either coming up or, of course, the presentation that was just presented. So with that, I'd invite any member of the public who would like to come, make a very brief comment. You can do so at this time. You can speak on the budget if you'd like to speak on the budget, just very briefly, but you're more than welcome to come forward. Come forward, sit down at the microphone. Identify yourself.
My name's Jerry Salka. I live in Prince Rupert. I've been a taxpayer since my first house I purchased in 1972. I managed to get my hands on the proposed budget late this afternoon. I've read it rather quickly, and some of it I've gone through in a little bit of a detail. And I have a number of questions, like a lot of questions. And hopefully we can deal with some of them today, maybe some next week. Some of the things that jumped out at me is there's been approvals in the budget last year for a fire truck, a dump truck, garbage truck, and these vehicles, with the explanation there, it appears that they're required, but they were never purchased in 2022. The question I have there is, what happened to the monies that were allocated in the 22 budget for these pieces of equipment? Because they have shown up in the cost has shown up in the 2023 budget.
I don't know how much we want to get into sort of question answer. Go through your questions,
Okay.
and we'll have staff sort of review those questions and come back at another point in time with answers.
The other thing that jumped out at me is there's a allocation of $1 million for road repair. That was about the same amount of money that was allocated last year. And driving around town quickly, I've noticed that a lot of that work that was done last year is in need of repair work again. $1 million is a drop in a bucket to repair the streets in Prince Rupert, and they're not getting any better. You know, I recall years ago going up to Terrace and laughing at the streets in Terrace. Well, I think the guys from Terrace are coming back and laughing at the streets in Prince Rupert. A few years ago, I came here and I suggested, because the city was talking about increasing the tax rate at that time, I made a suggestion that why not have a gas tax like they do in Vancouver, 2 cents per liter. And in that discussion, you know, I could not understand how a senior, and I use my mother as an example, who's never driven a car, is paying for a guy like me driving a car. In other words, user pay. You know, we have tourists come through here, they drive on our roads, we have heavy duty vehicles here, they drive on the roads. And at that time I was told that that was not possible. Well, it is possible if you wanted to make it possible. And, you know, I don't like taxes, but users should pay. Now, going to the water infrastructure replacement, I've seen there we've got $65 million and $4.8 million. Why are those numbers showing up as an expense or cost to the taxpayers of Prince Rupert, where the provincial government and some help from the federal government has allocated funding for repair of infrastructure work?
So just for clarity, those aren't costs. Those are both grants from the provincial government.
That's right.
So we got 65 million from them for specifically for the water system.
Right.
And then we got the $4 million,
Yeah.
which is allocated. So it doesn't affect the local taxpayer.
Well, I dropped this, so everything's out of order, but it'll be back in order when I come back next week.
Okay.
But there's a cost associated that the city is going to borrow $4.7 million to repair the infrastructure. So am I not understanding the money that has come from the provincial government and the federal government is to do repairs to the infrastructure? So is that money not available to do this kind of a cost, instead of the city borrowing $4.7 million to take money out of that 60 million and pay for those repairs?
I'm going to go to Dr. Buchan very quickly, but go ahead.
Your Worship, just in terms of the overall cost of this next 3 years of infrastructure replacement that we are trying to raise funds for and are successfully raising funds for, the cost of that infrastructure spend is somewhere around $200 million.
Right.
We have been successful in getting $65 million towards that from the province. we are making an application to the federal government for additional funds. Um, Between the federal and the provincial governments, it's highly unlikely that the full cost of the infrastructure spend that we have to do for the worst of our water system will be paid for. We'll have to borrow some money, and what is seen in the budget is a start of that borrowing. Right. We have to make a contribution towards this.
Well, I'm just gonna have to digest what
Yep.
Dr. Buchanan said, and I'm sure I'll bring it up again.
No problem.
And then there's 750,000 allocated to annual water line repairs, and that again goes back to the $69 million that is sitting there. I'm assuming that is not going to be used for that type of a purpose.
Correct. So if you can imagine, we identified 26.5 kilometers of high risk water pipe, which Dr. Buchan refers to as 200 million plus to replace. And that's what we've been getting the funding for. While we're doing that work over the course of 3 years, we'll still have water main breaks. We'll still have, like the pipes don't get instantly better, right? So we need operating money to go continue to do the work that, I mean, I only hope we get through the next winter better than we got through the last one, right?
So basically, you're saying that $68 million or $69 million cannot be used for that kind
Correct.
For that kind of work.
Correct.
Well, what's it going to be used for?
Yeah, I already said it's going to be used for the 20. We specifically asked for help with 26.5 kilometers clearly identified. As a matter of fact, in the package tonight, there's a map that outlines those most high risk pipes, and ask for help in replacing those pipes in specific. And so, that's where that money is being spent. But while we're doing all that work, we can be anticipating that other pipes in other places will be also causing us trouble, right?
Well, I
And so,
fully understand that. It just, to me, it seems odd that we have $69 million sitting there, and the city's going to borrow $750,000 as a precautionary fund to do replacement as they happen.
So, Director Bauman.
Hi. So the $750,000 we're not actually borrowing. It's already included in the utility fees that you're already paying. We've had this in the budget for a number of years, and it is for exactly what Mayor Pond has mentioned. Every time that there actually is a water break, we need funds to be able to go and pay for that. And the $65 million that the province gave us was not meant to substitute our regular operating repair budget.
Yeah. Yeah. Keep going.
Okay. The other one that seems to jump out at me is a wastewater plant, for lack of a better word, that is a kind of a new thing.
It's a pilot project.
Pilot project up on Ominika there.
Correct.
And I just want to remind people, we are on the island. There's only so much land available. And I would hate to see 20 years down the road, council sitting here and saying, wow, we can't use that land. That was a dumb decision to put a septic tank in the middle of the city. Just like, it's a dumb decision that was made to allow the industrial site out on the highway there. That was prime land for housing. And now we've got garages there, and we've got storage units there. You name it, we got it there.
I'm going to give you 2 more, and then I'm going to cut you off.
Okay. Well, then I'll pick out the best one.
And you're more than welcome to come back next week.
Oh, I'll be back next week, guaranteed. Yeah. The question I have is, I understand that the city is purchased or in negotiations to lease the McCarthy property.
Correct.
So which is it? Is it purchased or is it leased?
Uh, we have leased the property, and I think there's an option to purchase. Yeah,
What's the cost of the lease?
I can't tell you, but if we can get back to you on that.
And what's the monthly lease?
I can't tell you. I don't know off the top of my head.
And I understand that the city is gonna borrow $2 million to renovate, to accommodate lockers, washrooms.
There is a plan to renovate the building, and I believe that Legacy Prince Rupert is funding that. So Watson Island, revenues from Watson Island.
Revenues from Watson Island.
Yeah. Yeah. The condition of the current maintenance yard is no longer safe for employees, and so we have to find a new place for our maintenance crews, and it's a health and safety issue. This is substantially cheaper alternative than building a new building, I'm told.
Well, on that, don't you think it would be cheaper to utilize the property that you have now, where half the property out there is shops and offices and lunchrooms, and the other half is sand storage and junk and stuff like that.
Correct.
Where you could clear that part of the property off, put up some steel buildings, and um, and tear the other side down later. It doesn't cost that much to put up a steel building. I've put up steel buildings. They're fairly cheap, especially when they're going to be used for garages or things of that nature, versus paying a whole lot of money, $2 million to renovate a building that you may not get to own, and then if you do, what's the cost of the building? There must be a number in there somewhere.
Oh yeah, no, absolutely, and again, I didn't come prepared to answer that specific question, but
you
so
could direct me to where somebody
we're
knows.
we're taking down that information, and we'll get that for you.
Okay,
Yeah.
perfect.
Absolutely.
And one last question.
Good. And
Um,
I don't mean that poorly. Just
one last
good that
question.
you've got another question.
In here, there's a proposal that labor costs and new contracts are 7.6%. Is that over the term of 1 year, 2 years, or 3 years?
Is there somebody that can speak to that directly? Councilor or Director Bauman?
Thank you. That actually is just this year. It includes the mandatory employment related costs, pension, benefits, that sort of thing, including the increase in the union contract.
What's the term of the contract?
Term of the contract is 4 years.
So, wow. I've negotiated contracts for 30 years, and I've never negotiated a 7% contract, ever.
Dr. Buchan.
Your Worship, we're mixing apples and oranges
Correct.
here with the percentages. The union for a contract that was recently concluded with CUPE was 4 years at 4%, 4%, 4%, and 2%. That we can tell you. That's been ratified. The 7.1% is related to the proportion of the budget increase. And that includes not just the CUPE contract, but other contracts that have been settled as well. So the 7.1% is not an increase to the
Correct.
wages; it's a percentage of the budget.
And I think it's worth noting, and without sort of calling out, without pointing fingers at anybody, one of the challenges that you see is there's an amplification of costs because we can't share the costs across all taxpayers. We are prohibited from increasing taxes on those capped properties. DP World, the
Yeah,
Prince
I
Rupert
understand,
Grain,
all
Ridley
that.
Terminals. So that means if we have a 4% increase in cost somewhere, that could have been a 4% cost across the board, it has to be a much larger cost when concentrated into a fewer right? So there's a multiplier effect that happens with each and every one of these things. If our insurance costs are up 2% this year, it means that we have to raise 4% more off of the remaining taxpayers that we're able to tax.
Well, with Dr. Buchanan, thanks for the explanation, because now it makes sense. It makes sense to me.
There you
But
go.
the way it appears in our budget
Correct.
is like somebody just got a 7.1%
No,
wage increase.
no. It's what we need to increase the budget, taxation wise, in order to cover the
Yes,
4%.
well,
There
the
you go.
explanation makes sense.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Mr. Saka. Sorry?
Okay. I'll be back next week.
Oh, and there's an RCMP budget. I mean, there's other pieces to it. Yeah. Anyway, thank you very much for coming.
Okay.
Appreciate that. Is there any other member of the public that would like to come and address council for any matter that's on the agenda this evening? Yeah. Turn on the microphone, identify yourself. Super. Thank you.
Good to see you again. It's been a while since I've been in here. For those that don't know me, my name is Patrick Woodwicki. I moved to town in 2003, been a taxpayer since 2010. Some members of council and his worship knows me from my time with the Daily News. Since 2011, I've been with AFNO, the Francophone Association. Terry addressed some of the concerns, questions already. So I had a whole bunch of stuff written down. So now you're going to get the Cole's Notes version. I'm going to start with just kind of an interesting comment. So my job, I travel quite a bit. I meet families, kids, teachers, etc. And then, of course, they always ask, "Oh, do you have kids?" And when I say no, surprisingly, a lot of them say, "Oh, you're lucky." And I'm like, well, okay, maybe not. Depends who thinks having kids is lucky or whatever. That being said, with the cost of inflation these days, maybe we are lucky in that any increases that have happened, for example, the proposed property tax increase here in town, that my wife and I will probably be okay. My concern, though, as a taxpayer, is families, because $217 average per year household, although some factors like last year's assessment, it could be a lot higher for some families. For example, groceries, which for 3 people 2 years ago were $150 a week. Now it's $150 just for my wife and I. Every month, natural gas is $20 more, hydro's $20 more. And so it adds up. And there are families here in Rupert, and not just Rupert, everywhere, that it's getting tougher and tougher to get by. So my concern, not only with the proposed property tax increase for this year, but the fact that it may go up again next year or again the following year, concerns me for those families. Like, will some families have to leave town? Will some, God help us, lose their house or whatever, right? So that is my concern. And just to give a what if average, so what if the extreme happened and say 500 families left town, 500 taxpayers, that kind of thing, or 500 people lost their houses? Since the budget is also based on how many taxpayers we have in town, so for example, that would be a loss of $217,000 to the city's coffer. So I guess I'm just saying, be careful how you go about it. And maybe, I know it's down to 12 now, but maybe try to stay the course until we see if the city wins that dispute, that the appeal with the port. I mean, we don't know, and we won't know for a year. So I get the 4.3 and that kind of thing. But with us already having one of the highest utility rates in the province, I think only Grand Isle is higher percentage-wise, and we're trying to get more people to move to Prince Rupert. It's tough enough trying to convince people to come here when it rains all the time, but having that extra, oh, well, how much taxes do I have to pay? That's not what we want, right? So just a couple suggestions. Terry was good asking questions. Just a couple things I would say is maybe just hold off for a year. I know because of the port decision, property taxes will have to go up somewhat to deal with that loss. But for example, the city says they could use 3 more staff members to help with certain departments when money's tight. I don't see why spending more money would make sense. And if they're worried about doing more with less, well, welcome to the pandemic. Everyone's doing it. Whether it's right or wrong, that's just kind of the reality these days. And hopefully it'll get better soon. And just another comment from what Terry said, user fee. Again, I travel for work all the time, and every municipality, there's a little municipal tax where you stay at hotels. And I know there's already one here in town for Rupert as well. But why not raise that 0.5%, for example? If you have 20,000 people stay at the Crest this summer at $200 a night for a room on average, that's $20,000 right there. So that might be a suggestion, user fees like Mr. Saka was suggesting. And just to wrap up, the last time you were in this chair, your council had to deal with, without a doubt, probably the most difficult period in Prince Rupert's economic history. And somehow the council that day, I know as part of the Daily News, we used to criticize the crap out of you because that was our job. But at the day, you somehow find ways to make it work. And at the time, while property taxes did have to go up a bit each year, council never went too much all at once. Because in 2003, when I moved here, there was this town was dead. There was like maybe 8,000 people here. The town was just hanging on. And had council increased it too high, you might have seen those 500 families leave town, and that would have been it. So I guess my message here today is just a caution. Like if it's 12% this year, what happens if it's 12% next year? That kind of thing. So that's what I would do. Like any taxpayer, I'm never happy of paying more taxes, but I understand if it has to go up a little bit, that kind of thing, the circumstances we're in, and I know our water pipes seriously need fixing and upkept, and yeah, this winter was brutal. You should have seen the day we had to move our office on March 1st. That was fun. Mm-hmm. But I would just keep that in mind to all council. I know many of you, well, some of you were here still in 2003 when our city was basically in survival mode. So yeah, things are better now, but let's keep it getting better, and let's not scare people away and scare people from moving here. And that's all I have to say.
Thank you. Thanks very much. Is there anybody else that would like to come and address council about any item coming up on the agenda? Come on forward.
I would like to address the council regarding there's an item coming up on the agenda regarding the parking at Digby Tower.
Do we have anything? No, there's nothing on the agenda with regards to the, no. No, sorry. Again, state your name. Turn the mic on. There we go.
Hello, I'm Toby Lake. I've been living here for about 9 years. I enjoy it. It's a great city. Something that I've been interested in foresight for the infrastructure planning. I'd like to see more into the future about what we're going to be doing, and allow public more time to discuss the upcoming changes. I know that we've done a great job with McBride. What I love about the changing the pipes is having new substrate for the roads, and so that all the pockets underneath the road are packed down so that it doesn't have the same problems that a lot of them are having now with the potholes, and a complete redo of the sidewalks and the ramps for accessing the sidewalks. That could be more of a discussion that we could have on a public level to make sure it's as much comfort to people that are using them as possible. Another thing I've noticed is that a lot of structures are inaccessible for a lot of people, including this building here. Case in point, I walked up the stairs to get here. I'd like to see that as something that that in the future, not that we need to tear down everything right now and replace it, but at least to know a sort of an escalation of how we're going to get there in 5, 10, maybe 15 years from now. And that's what I'd like to know. And when they were redoing the park over I'm foggy on the name of the area, but they've got the dog park and the new park where there used to be a baseball diamond that used to have lots of trees in it. There was a lot of promotion about placemaking and making sure that that people had places to be themselves, to come together and discuss whatever community projects that are going on, or even intersectional groups having a place to be able to do what they want to do. I'd like to see more of that. Coming from Toronto, it's sort of a prerequisite for me, really. But I think everything's really good right now. That there's some momentum. I like that the province helped, and I look forward to what the feds will do for us. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anyone else? All right, well then we'll move on. We have the consent agenda in front of you. I'd entertain a motion to accept the consent agenda and act on the recommendations contained within. Councillor Adey, Councillor Randhawa. Any comments, questions, pieces you'd like to bring forward? I do want to draw attention just to a few of the things that are in here. One is item 2 is the letter from Minister Kang that outlines that $4 million that came from the Growing Community Fund. The item number 11 in the report is a report from the communications manager with regards to tourism Prince Rupert and the Mariners Park plan. There's a great planning document in the consent agenda, and I encourage members of the public to look at it. Also, in the next report, which is item 12, there's a report from Director of Operations and Intergovernment Relations with regards to the water infrastructure project. And in there, you will see a map of the most at-risk pipes, and it's revealing to have a look at that map. So I encourage again members of the public to have a look at that. And finally, the last item there would have council, by approving the agenda, pass a resolution in support of an application from the Salmon Festival to Northern Development Initiative Trust. Councillor Cunningham.
In correspondence, I'd like to draw attention to Article 3, a letter from Judy Warren about the cruise ship passengers.
Yep.
The fact that she points out the strong points for, as an ambassador, promoting Prince Rupert and meeting the cruise ship passengers, about how the unique experience with Cow Bay, the small shops, the art gallery, as she says, or the ice house, and that how important they are to people coming off the ships, that they find it a rather unique experience to come to Prince Rupert and not have to run the gauntlet of ship-owned or cruise-owned businesses, which is detrimental to most communities as the end of cruise season, they just shut down and leave. And one of those businesses that a lot of people really like is the ice house, which is, it's kind of a catch-22. The port does a lot of good things, giving seed money to different organizations. But here they are, possibly shutting down the ice house for the fact that it's going up for bid for whoever wants to bid on it. And this co-op of artists might not be able to match the price they want for it, so they'll have to shut down. So here's an organization that's a grassroots organization that promotes art within the community to be sold to local people as well as the cruise ship industry. And it is an attraction. And so you've got the port in one hand saying, we'll help you here. And on the other hand, they're going to shut down one of the few outlets that local artists get to showcase their work and everything. And I really think that as a good corporate citizen, the port should be looking at something like that and encouraging it, not discouraging it. Now, I don't know if the rumors are true or not, but they seem to be rampant throughout town that this is going to close down. And it's going to, or it's not necessarily going to close down, it's going to be put up to be bid on or for suggestions. So if that is the case, I hope the port reconsiders this, because a lot of people really enjoy that place. And I think it's very important for not just tourism, but for encouraging local artists to promote their product and things like this. So, you know, again, I'm hoping that this is just isn't a dollars and cents thing, because if it is, again, the port showing its true colors, even though we seem to, every time we turn around, they're promoting how good they are. And so if they want to promote exactly how good they are as a community entity, they should be looking after the grassroots as well. And on that same note, in 16 days is the first cruise ship, and I still haven't seen any movement on downtown businesses that have to be cleaned up. So I'm hoping that's something that'll be on the agenda rather quickly.
All right, any other comments? All in favor of the resolution? Any opposed? It is carried. We then move on to reports. Item number 7, number 7A, report from the Manager of Communications with regards to a request for Emergency Operations Center through UBCM capacity funding, and the recommendation is as follows. The council support the city's application to UBCM for Emergency Operations Center funding for the radio system reliability upgrade project for $30,000, including staff time to implement the project and to provide overall grant management. Can I have a motion to that effect? Councillor Randhawa, Councillor Forster. Any discussion, questions? There's a good report in the package. I think it answers it all. All in favor? Any opposed? Carried. Item number 7B, report from the Manager of Communications with regards to a second request to UBCM. The recommendation is that council support the city's application to UBCM's Urban Communities Partnership or Partnering for Reconciliation Funding Program for $10,000 to support coordination and event costs resulting from the Reconciliation Committee. Can I have a Councillor Forster, Councillor Skelton Morven, any questions, comments? Again, the report pretty self-evident. All in favor? Any opposed? Carried. And then item number C is the late agenda item, and it is the report from the Director of Operations and Intergovernment Relations. It has to do with the 23 budget and the capital program that's coming out of that. It's a fairly substantial report, and in going through the budget last week to do the draft budget, you know, we were going through so much that I think this almost got lost and of course these are proposed items, but it gives you a sense of the scale of what's being tackled, and I'd like to go through them one by one, but Director Pucci or Dr. Buchan, I want you to chime in here as we go through this, because you're the drivers of this. But to each one of these, maybe Director Pucci, let's start. If I can, Dr. Buchan, I'll go directly to Director Pucci. With the new public works building, it was discussed a little bit earlier. You might add more light on that.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, we've been talking about it for a while. The current facility right now has health and safety concerns. It's actually built on part of a garbage dump, so the soil conditions there for a new build isn't great. It is in a slide zone as well, so geotechnically it's in a very not really favorable area. It doesn't get a lot of light, so the mold and mildews build up there. So the new place where we're planning to move is closer to the community, more efficient, more effective. I think that we'll still retain the yard as materials for materials lay down and all of that. But the new facility is really the right fit for us. It's taking and combining three smaller buildings that we have and the leaky portables that we have right now, and getting everyone into one place where everyone can be safe and secure and report to in the morning. So we're quite pleased about that. And that one is supported by Legacy as well, which is great, and there isn't any tax implications associated with that. Just even to start this, is that we were very, very pleased with being able to present our capital budget to council this year for operations. There isn't at all very many tax implications associated with what we're doing, which is pretty phenomenal. We've been very successful in getting grants and being able to use grant money instead of our own to move forward with some of this stuff. Also, some of these things that we're looking at, like for sewer treatment and that is really a must-have. We have administrative directives from the federal government that make us do what we have to do here. I know one of the questions that came out earlier was around the pilot program for Ominika, and so this is a new green, innovative way to deal with the community's wastewater. We think it's the way of the future. It's in a marshy area already that isn't really conducive to building below Ominika, and really the alternative to that would be putting three different large wastewater facilities on our waterfront. And that's something that I think we would rather cherish, that waterfront and our views, and keep sort of the wastewater treatment in sort of the back area in the marshlands, and really be in a green environment that is environmentally friendly and resilient to flooding and sea level rise and stuff. So we're really happy with that. Our waterfront development program that we're putting forward with the movement of our airport ferry is something we're very proud of. That is fully funded by the provincial government, which we're absolutely thrilled with. We're doing some park renewal. We are doing McBride Sport Court renewal. That is a carryover from last year as well, no tax implication. Our fleet or equipment, most of that equipment was approved last year, and most of it, the money is just rolled over into this year. So we went to go order these pieces of equipment and found out that there was 10 months, 11 months, 13 months worth of lead time because of COVID. So what we would do is we put the order in, but you don't actually pay for it until it arrives. So the money then just gets rolled over into this year's budget. So therefore that money was shown on last year's budget, rolled over, shown in this year's budget, and actually getting spent this year. So no new tax implication associated with those as well. We have all of our annuals, which we have a streetlight program, we have a water program, a sewer program, sidewalk program. These programs have been around for a long time. They allow us to do repairs for health and safety concerns for, say, the sidewalks. We'll see some letdowns that need to be redone, some curb. We'll pick an area and really, do 100 meters or something to really beef up that area with those sidewalks for health and safety. Also, they fix trip and fall hazards that we get occasionally that we have to address right away. Street lights, the community knows that our street lights tend to rust at the bottom, and in some places you'll have big holes. And so when they get identified, we need money in those programs to be able to swap those out immediately. Again, those are already built in. There's no new taxation associated with those. We've heard the community about the 3rd Avenue and Fulton traffic light. It is old. It is archaic. It breaks down. We cannot find parts. So if that street light goes down one more time, it's likely not going to get fixed and just be a blinking red. So we are going to be fixing that to today's standards. We have Bridgeworks. this year planned. These are absolutely required. If not, we will likely be downgraded on some of our bridges so that we maybe can't take buses and stuff across them. So we have to do upgrades to these bridges. There will be a couple years worth of upgrades. This is the first sort of tranche, and there'll be more coming. We are finishing up some work on the Woodworth Side Road from the floods that happened 2 years back. So on the way out, we were doing some upgrades there. Landfill works. These works, again, no tax implications. We do accruals that pay for this stuff. So when you go across the scale, a certain portion of that money goes into account so that we can continually operate and close that landfill when it's done. So this money is sitting there ready for us to use. Water treatment, we got a grant for a large portion of that. That is the facility design, submarine line, which is under Fern Passage, the overland section, and the SCADA towers. We will have to borrow some money in the future for that, but we don't know exactly how much that is until we have full design. We have completed the IRS design works and the water system master plan, but as part of the $65 million money that we got, we had to make a commitment to fund the design works associated with it. So to get the 65, let's just say we had to put in 5 million, which is a pretty good payback on that. So we committed with the Premier and the province that we would do design for all of the work ahead of time, and then they would help us with the works. And so we have to honor our side of that commitment, which is the design works, and they have come through with their side of the commitments, which is the $65 million. We are continuing with the work on First Avenue. That is a priority line. That line will be able to get funded out of the $65 million because it is identified as a high-risk line. And we are looking at doing Shawatland Road as our first objective line that's going to happen out of that $65 million. So that is from where we end our Fern Passage work associated with water treatment all the way up to our reservoir. That is the most critical line in town. That line is our feeder line. If that goes down, we have no water in our community. So we have to make sure that that water or that line is secure. That will go under the road, and the community will benefit with a new road going out to the industrial site, a new standard size road. It's a little slim right now, we know that, so we'll be increasing the width of that on the way back. We are looking at Hayes Creek replacement study, which removes the sewer main out of Hayes Creek. This was identified years ago as a priority. We constantly have minor leaks, and we have to deal with environment on that. Again, this one does not require any taxation. The industrial park as well, the treatment plant there needs to be upgraded. That doesn't have any implications. And we are doing outfall repairs on 2 outfalls, and those outfalls, we are eliminating one and doing a repair on the other, and that is required from our administrative directive with Environment Canada. And we have some great community plans. So we have a downtown revitalization plan we're looking at doing, and parks and open space, active transportation, and we have successfully put in some electric vehicle charging stations down at the rec center. So I mean, we are absolutely thrilled with being able to present this, and I think that if the budget document, if it's read carefully, you can tell where the taxation parts actually come in the little graph part. It'll actually tell you if it's supported by a grant, supported by accrual, supported by reserve, or supported by taxation. And if we go through the budget, many of the things aren't requiring taxation. Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Yeah, and Dr. Buchan.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'd just like to make a few more comments and I guess emphasize this, how significant the plan is this year for works in and around Prince Rupert, works that will make a huge difference to the future of this community. One of the items that was mentioned was this pilot sewage treatment plant. So yes, it is innovative and it is a pilot, and we have some grant funding towards that. and it's going in and on a piece of Prince Rupert that you can't really do much else with. But what it's also doing is, once we prove this, is it'll save us somewhere in the order of $100 million from an alternative conventional sewage treatment approach and facilities on the waterfront. So that's one of the things that the staff team is achieving. It's not just getting grants. It's doing things smartly and cost effectively in ways that benefit the community. Another example of that, of course, is Legacy Watson Island, and just to repeat what was said and buried in the long budget proposals, because they are long. I just want to emphasize this: $5.4 million is what Legacy has contributed this year. If the city of Prince Rupert had not pursued the development of Legacy and Watson Island, we wouldn't have had that. And what that contribution this year means in terms of a tax increase avoidance is approximately just over 14%. That's what we would have had on top of this budget if it weren't for Legacy, and utilities would have been up 75%. So that's just to pay respect to the good work that has gone on here. And one of the presenters rightly spoke about the impact to the community for tax increases, and staff are and council is keenly aware of that, and that's one of the reasons why we are focused on addressing and achieving the right outcome for the PILT, because that is a significant impact to the community, and if we lose that, it will mean millions of dollars of money that we'd have to pay back to the port, because this challenge goes back to 2019. Significant impact, if we lose that. So we're intent on not losing that, but we will have to go through the process. This underscores our need to resolve the port tax cap legislation issue, because, as you pointed out, Mr. Mayor, this passes on the weight of the tax increase onto all the other businesses and residences, rather than the port industries that have the cap. And of course, bringing about a successful negotiation for a resource benefit agreement. Those three things are critical for the future, and if we can achieve those, then we can hopefully avoid the ongoing large increases where we don't want to see this being dealt with by way of taxation. It's not fair to the residents, and so we're focused on finding solutions that are fair to the residents.
The other comment I'd make just in passing is, we discussed, and it's always a challenge, right, to communicate these things, but the provincial grant of $65 million is so huge relative to what any other community our size has ever received at any time ever in the history of the province. Like, it is that big. It's far bigger than any grant we've ever received in the history of this city. It's just so significantly outsized that it actually gives us this remarkable opportunity. Should we be successful in attracting similar money from the federal government, what that does, what that money is targeted, is to do, and you can again go look at that map of where you can see the red pipes. It will replace those pipes, and that's all it will do. And we're saying, whoa, wait a second. If we're going to go dig up any one of the streets in Prince Rupert and then just put the water pipe back in the ground and cover it back up again, that's foolish, right? Let's use that opportunity to leverage it. And when we're opening up that street, let's rebuild the street. Let's separate the storm sewer from the sanitary sewers that were ready for sewage treatment. Let's put the street back together in a proper condition that it is 100% renewed. So, this this $200 million of roughly replacing 26.5 kilometers of water pipe has to be accompanied by a contribution either from other people or the city or from somewhere that we do the rest of the work while we're in the ground. It would be a crime at this point in the city's history to let that opportunity go to waste. And that may mean that those of us that live here and enjoy those roads and want them, it may mean we have to be the ones that pay for it. I'm prepared to do that. A question was asked earlier about, shouldn't that road budget be bigger? Isn't $1 million pretty small? It's incredibly small. If you want to know where I'm arguing that number needs to be much bigger, even if it means that we have to pay more tax. We hit those potholes all the time. Anyway, I don't want to go on. Any questions or comments from other members of council? Councillor Niche.
I just want to stress a little bit more about the ability for people to try changing the budget themselves with the program that's available on the city's website, because it is a very interesting program. So you can sit there, if you feel that money is spent in the wrong place or should be spent in one place, and it allows you to change those categories and to really, and you'd be kind of shocked, you change something here and you realize how much of an implication that is, and it would be interesting for more people to use that tool, because if they used it, then they might understand the budget more, and they can put their input in where they feel there should be more money spent, say roads, or less money spent. So if more people would use that tool, which is available to them, then we would have more information for us to work on this budget too.
Great. With that, I'll move on. So I'll move on to bylaws. We've got one bylaw in front of us. That's the Cow Bay Marina Fees and Regulations Amendment, with a recommendation that council give first, second, third reading to the City of Prince Rupert Marina Fees and Regulations Amendment Bylaw number 3516. Can I have a mover? Councillor Cunningham, Councillor Skelton Morven. Sorry, I'm hesitating here. Any discussion? This would raise the fees down there. Councillor Cunningham.
Okay, I think it's great we're raising them. They've been dormant for a while, but this is a one-time increase. Should we be looking at increments in the future so we're keeping up with the other marinas that we're comparing ourselves to? Because obviously in the last 3-4 years they've been putting up their rates and we haven't. So I'm all for putting this through, but I want to make sure that we're not going to be dormant for another 3 years and then
Dr.
catch up again.
We will be monitoring those rates, and if the market increases, we'll bring a bylaw back so that we remain competitive.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? All in favor? Any opposed? Carried. We now move on to questions, comments from council. Councillor Adey.
Thank you. I have 4 questions, which is more than my average, I think. But just before that, I just want to preface some of the discussion around the budget. At the moment, I know, speaking for myself, my role at the moment, I think, is to listen rather than speak. And I am gradually generating questions that I think will be worth answering and will be useful for the public to hear answers to. But I share Councillor Niche's encouragement that in order for us to be effective listeners, we need to hear a lot of voices. So I'm going to offer an encouragement to members of the public who have an opinion to not just share them at their kitchen tables or coffee tables or wherever they may be, but take that time to share it with us so that we can be more educated. In terms of the items I have, a couple of them are probably fairly quick, so I'll ask those ones quickly. First, this was a response to a question from somebody I was speaking with. The reconciliation framework that we passed in October, I think, and we do have a committee struck. Somebody was trying to find that document on the city website and discovered that it was actually quite hard to find. So I'm making the request that we explore some way to make it a little more prominent so the public can have access to it.
Your request has been noted.
Okay. Second, again, talking to somebody with a concern with regard to the stairs between 3rd Avenue and 4th Avenue West.
Right.
These are the ones just opposite the Ocean Center Mall. I see that there's a tree down across there, and the question was, where is that in the pecking order for resolution?
Director Pucci.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through the chair. So at this point right now, we might not have the money to make the repairs required. So they are assessing it for geotechnical concerns, and they may remain closed until there's an opportunity to actually address it. Thank you.
Sorry, I would just follow up that I think at one point there was a sign indicating that they were closed, and for whatever reason it's not there anymore, so perhaps that could be addressed. Third question is reflecting conversations that I'm seeing online around the $1 million from the City West, which I very much appreciate from where I sit. Some people are wondering whether that is the same as the money that we normally get via City West on an annual basis, or is that a standalone separate thing? I don't know who might have the answer.
Dr. Buchan.
Thank you, Your Worship. It is the same source of funding. Now, what's different here is that they had a 2-year holiday because of heavy capital expenditures. But in the light of our fiscal situation, they revisited that and they have found a way to send over a sizable sum outside of their financial plan.
Councillor Adey, you may continue.
And one more. This, through the mayor, is to Dr. Buchan. I understand that the UBCM convened a housing forum just in the last week or so. And Dr. Buchan was in attendance, so I'm wondering if you would like to share some highlights.
Dr. Buchan.
Your Worship, I'd be pleased to. And I'll start by saying that this was an unusual forum. UBCM often during its normal convention has sessions on housing because it's always an important topic. But the housing crisis in BC and Canada is getting worse. And so they decided to hold this forum, and I would say it was very well attended. They used the forum, the province used the forum in part to talk about their new housing strategy, their housing plan. And there's a few highlights of that is mandating that secondary suites are allowed in every single family home in the province, which you know is similar in terms of I guess what Prince Rupert does. Prince Rupert just legalized secondary suites I think a year and a half ago approximately. They've in not every community, but certainly in the high growth communities, they're looking at mandating 4, perhaps even 6 housing units on every single family lot, every lot that is single family now, through either redevelopment or conversion of large houses into what you would call a multiplex, or so turning 1 into 6, which is a significant addition of housing density within existing fabric, and so that's a powerful move. I think of a particular significance perhaps for Prince Rupert residents that have a property that they're thinking of suiting, turning into a suite, or making improvements so that it's a legal suite. One of the programs that the province is announcing with this plan is to provide a forgivable $40,000 loan for residents to do renovations to their home to make a secondary suite. So, anybody in Prince Rupert that has a property that they could improve and make a building code compliant secondary suite, $40,000 will go a long way towards that. So, and now I think they've identified about 3,000 of these loans in the province. So I'm hoping that Prince Rupert property owners are paying attention so we can grab some of that. I would say, a very large acknowledgement that the housing crisis is because we don't have enough supply. Now that may seem obvious, but the debate versus over whether it's supply or demand management, the debate is out. They say we have not been building enough homes in BC. And incidentally, the federal government used to be heavily involved in building homes. And when they left that policy initiative decades ago, if they had not left it, there would have been another approximately 600,000 homes in Canada, which is approximately what we're short at this point. So really good reason for the federal government to get back into the game, because it's not working on its own. The federal government has historically played a very important part, and I think there is strong encouragement for that to be reinitiated. Another major driver of housing demand is immigration. And what they identified was that over the next, and we need immigration, particularly for a lot of the jobs that we have a hard time filling nationally. We need immigration, but immigration also has another aspect to it, which is it increases housing demand. And the amount of immigration, both permanent and temporary, over the next 5 years is going to be very high. So that raises the challenge for us nationally, and particularly in British Columbia, the mandate to build more homes. So I think that I don't think that it's going to be a choice for provincial and federal governments to have to get heavily involved in addressing the supply issue. I think we'll look forward to seeing more programs and more opportunity. And we know the issue, the impact here all too well. And I think that in terms of the tools that have been identified, we are using those tools. What we really need to be able to do is to attract developers more effectively. We have some. We actually made more contact during that forum and made some personal invites for developers to come up to Prince Rupert. But we need to see some action on that, because it is critical to economic growth in Prince Rupert, growth of the port. Because if we don't get that housing, that becomes another push for automation of the port.
Any other comments or questions from council? Council Cunningham.
Just a quick note that on the 13th, next Thursday and Friday, on the 13th from 6 p.m. to 9 p.m., and on Friday from the 14th from 9 a.m. to 12 p.m., there's going to be a Mariner Park community meeting being held by Tourism Prince Rupert at the Old Amante building, the new Lex Columns Community Hall. It's 824 3rd Avenue, across from Overweighty. I think it's very important people are aware of this, because they're going to be doing plans or being open to suggestions of what the new park should look like and the input. They have money available to make changes to it and that. So I think it's very important. It's a kind of a jewel for not only tourism but people in Prince Rupert. So I'm hoping people will attend it and put their 2 bits in.
Great. Anything else? Hearing none, I'd entertain a motion to adjourn. Councillor Niche, Councillor Skelton Morven, All in favor? Any opposed? It is carried. Meeting adjourned.